And welcome back to an episode of the Clue Your Jets podcast. Your hosts Ben Blessington and Michael Nania. Training camp is well underway. The pads come on today, Michael. Zach Wilson had a big practice on Saturday, generated a lot of hype. What are your thoughts on training camp so far? The vibe around this team is certainly different than it's been the last few years.
Yeah, it's been fun to have training camp back. Every year it is a very fun time of the season just to kind of overreact to every single report we get. Wilson makes a great throw, Wilson throws an interception. It's just fun to kind of read into everything and have all these takeaways. So it's an interesting time of year. There's obviously been a lot of overturning with this team in terms of the personnel and the coaching staff. So to kind of get a feel for the new players and the new coaches, the type of offense and defense they're going to run, just the way that these players go about their practices. It's been fun to kind of see everything start to manifest itself on the field.
Yeah, and you don't want to read too much into every little training camp play. Like obviously Zach Wilson and other young players are going to have, like Robert Saleh said, ebbs and flows. I mean, Zach Wilson's going to have more bad practices and more good practices. But the one on Saturday, I think that stood out to me. I mean, for a number of reasons, and obviously there were a few video clips released that I'm sure the Jets aren't too happy about that they got filmed. But honestly, they were all good plays, so can't be too upset about that. We're going to talk about those in a second. But the thing that stood out to me about Zach Wilson was, look, he had the whole 2-day contract holdout. He had a not so great practice on Friday, which it's unfair to him that was so publicized. I feel like I saw that all day on Friday was that he didn't have a good practice. It's his first practice shaking off the rust in a new system in the NFL. Like we knew that he was going to be a bit raw at times. And it's the first practice with fans. Fans haven't watched the Jets, like you said, since that Steelers home game in 2019. That was the last time the Jets had hosted any fans. So it's been a long time. There's a lot of excitement about this team. The commissioner was there. There was kind of a lot of pressure on Zach Wilson, and it's like dumb to say because it's a practice. And look, this is a kid that has played, although he went to BYU, he has played in some big moments. He's had a pro day. He's had some bigger moments in his career that I'm sure he's been kind of nervous for. But this was kind of an important day for him to show that he can respond to adversity, bounce back, not let the bad practices spiral. The fans are all there. The fans are recording you. The commissioner is watching, and he put on a show. He had a great practice, and that's all it is. It's a great practice. As Allen Iverson said, we're talking about practice, but I think the mental makeup of Zach Wilson was on display there. The fact that he was able to bounce back. Michael, before we talk about some of the other plays from practice and what we're looking forward to seeing this week, what were your thoughts on Saturday's practice from Wilson?
I think, like you said, it is kind of an early high pressure moment that he kind of responded to. And we're definitely not going to completely overreact to this, but right
Yeah, we
now it's
are.
all we got. We are going to overreact to it. That's what I'm getting to. It's early August. This is the news. We're going to react to it. We're going to have some fun with it. I'm not going to sit here and declare he's going to be a Super Bowl champ, perennial MVP because of it, but it's fun to react to. He had some pressure. He came out and had a fairly bad practice after holding out for a couple days, missing a few practices, and he delivered. So it was definitely positive to see that early on. And obviously, hopefully, keeps it going because if he just alternates between good and bad practices, it's not the best thing in the world. But for now, just to see that, it was really refreshing because the holdout was lingering, and then that ends fairly promptly before it became a big deal. He has a bad practice, and then before that becomes an overblown thing that lingers on. Wilson comes out and has a good practice on Saturday. So some of the plays were just really impressive that he was making. They seemed applicable to real game action. So it was fun and entertaining to see some of the plays that were out there, and just overall to hear about him thriving was refreshing after the holdout, and also how he started things on his first practice.
Yeah, and there are some things that you can take away from seeing it in person. And look, you're going to be at practice today, so obviously on our next
Yep.
podcast, we're going to get the in-person report. But one of the things I kept reading over and over is that you really see how live his arm is in person, how that ball just explodes out of his arm. He doesn't look hard for him at all, and you saw it on that deep bomb to Elijah Moore. And look, the Jets don't want practices being filmed for a number of reasons. I think one of the things that's more interesting to you and I, Michael, is that we get to see the exact formations, the personnel, some of the plays that they're going to be running. And, for whatever reason, paranoia or not, they don't want other teams being able to see that. You do get some sort of benefit when you have a new scheme and a new quarterback that nobody really knows what it's going to look like. But the other reason is, look, if Zach Wilson throws a brutal pick six, because he probably will at times in practice because he's a rookie, and somebody records it, you can put it online. It's going to go viral. And look, you can only protect him for so long because he's going to be playing in a few weeks. But there are a few reasons they don't want it. But damn, did I miss football. I mean, it was so great to see some plays, and especially with all the things that we've been talking about, real tangible evidence of seeing Zach Wilson in a Jets helmet, throwing a deep ball, 55-yarder, effortless 55-yarder to Elijah Moore, who was wide open and then cooked the DB to get into the end zone. I mean, it was such a great play. Some people are arguing that maybe it would have been a sack. Great rep from John Franklin Myers. But, overall, Michael, when you see some of these plays, and I guess we should just talk about the deep bomb. Like you said, we don't want to overreact to every little thing. But out of some of the highlights that were released, I mean, what were some of your main takeaways, whether it's from Zach Wilson's perspective, some of the personnel and some of the formations the Jets are using, the little bit of information we were able to get from what this Jets offense might look like?
We shouldn't even put out these disclaimers because we're going to analyze what every single player did on every single one of these reps
We already have.
that's available. We've already been doing that. Before this, I was just watching the completion, the contested Elijah Moore completion on the sideline, just like 2 minutes straight while Ben was talking. And I was just like mesmerized, locked in. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to read into everything right now. So first, I guess we'll start with the biggest play that made the rounds, the Elijah Moore touchdown bomb. And really the biggest thing for me, obviously this probably would have been a sack in a real game.
He does jump out of it. You can't say for sure.
It had a good chance.
Sure
I don't think you say for sure, but it would be a likely sack. But I think the biggest takeaway is just how effortlessly he steps up and releases the ball. Obviously, it's not a tough throw. We can't see what happened in the back end for sure, how he got that wide open, but he's got 7+ yards of separation. So it's not the toughest throw in the world, but the way he's able to step up, and it doesn't even look like his feet are completely under him. He kind of just flicks the ball, and it's, perfectly in stride, a little bit short, but a fairly great throw. And it's just the way that he's able to effortlessly step up and flick that ball. And also Franklin Myers has a really good pressure against Moses for a possible sack. I don't know what happened defensively here, but there were some other good secondary moments. Even on good offensive plays, there were some good moments in coverage. But this one, the biggest takeaway, Zach Wilson stepping up and so effortlessly getting that deep power. And then Moore at the end of this play. I mean, I know there's no pads and no tackling, but he just kind of toys with Joyner at the end of this play with these jukes. It's just so filthy.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at the time from when Wilson steps up to the time the ball explodes out of his hand, I mean, it's such a quick – that's where you get the Mahomes comparisons, because there's not many quarterbacks that can do what he does with his body there. And, you can see it on his BYU highlights, and it's a practice clip, but it still is evident just the amount of natural arm explosiveness and talent that he has. The fact that he doesn't really need a big buildup, to really step into the throw. He can just kind of use his front leg as a lever and just, have the ball explode out of his arms. The biggest thing that was that I took away from this, outside of what you just talked about, was obviously the Jets are finally welcome to the 21st century with different uses of motion. It was curious to see that Corey Davis was the one in motion.
I was actually just going to point out, I just noticed that after all this time watching this, but yeah, go ahead.
Well, that Davis comes in an orbit motion. He doesn't really do much. He's more of a decoy. Obviously, you can run a lot of different plays off that concept of having Corey Davis run that orbit motion. You can hand it to him. You can do whatever. But it's just nice to see the different route concepts and the motions that the Jets are doing, because so many times under Adam Gase, you would just see the play that they've called, and you would get to see the X's and O's, and you'd see the exact route concepts. And it's just like, what the hell are we doing here? It doesn't make any sense to have 3 receivers in this area of the field. And look, we're analyzing 5 plays from practice here. So, that could still happen to Mike LaFleur, but it's a pretty safe bet under this Shanahan, McVay, Matt LaFleur offense that this is going to be a 21st century offense. And yeah, the motions, it puts a lot of stress on the defense. I mean, there's a few plays in practice where it did cause a busted coverage, and the busted coverage in this play wasn't necessarily from the motion, but it puts a lot of stress on the defense.
Also, isn't that Carter II who's catching up on that play? He looked pretty fast catching up.
Yeah, okay. We don't have to analyze every little thing. And the other thing was, the other play that I kind of wanted to talk about was, there was one out route to Elijah Moore that I thought was probably his best throw of the game, the practice, outside of the deep ball. Just
That's where
because,
our heads are right now. We're
yeah,
in a game
we're in a game.
mindset.
I mean, look, I can't wait. There's 3 weeks. Is it 3 weeks or is it 4 weeks until the Giants game? Less than that. 2 weeks. 2 weeks,
Yeah.
right? Jeez, oh
Yeah.
my, 2 weeks until the Jets play the Giants. So this is what we have to talk about for the next 2 weeks. But he has that one out route to Elijah Moore where he rolls out and kind of just throws off his back foot, and it just perfectly placed. And the reason I love that play is it's just such a great rep from pretty much everybody involved. I mean, there's
Yep.
3 guys in the defensive line using spin moves. Bryce Huff is a great move, beats Morgan Moses, but Moses has a great recovery. Wilson obviously has a tremendous throw. Barrios gets open. Mosley has great coverage. Moore makes a great catch, and Hall has a great, contest of that. So it was just it's the perfect training camp play where you kind of always want the offense to end up winning these, but you want the defense to really play it tight. I think that was my favorite play that got released, even though it was only, a 15-yard gain or so.
Yeah, this is probably my favorite play because of the exact reason you said. You want to see competitive plays. You don't want to see one side be too dominant over the other. And reps like this one, where even though the offense ultimately wins, there are plenty of good defensive things going on here too. You mentioned the spin moves. Huff had a really good one against Moses, and Moses did enough to recover and allow Wilson to escape, but Huff did scorch him to start it out. Rankins had a really good one against Van Roten, and then Lawson tries one on the other side against Becton, and Becton actually handled that pretty well. So obviously that's been publicized that Lawson's been playing really well against Becton, but this is a good rep for Becton against Lawson. CJ Mosley's coverage on this is great against, I believe, Herndon running a post route, but the tight end runs a post. Mosley drops off the line of scrimmage, picks it up. And then this Moore and Hall battle has been really fascinating all the way back to OTAs. They've been matching up a lot, and this is a matchup you wouldn't think Bryce Hall would do well with. Hall is a bigger, longer guy. He's over 6 feet, 200 pounds with long arms, and Moore is a small, shifty guy. You wouldn't think Hall would be able to handle that too well, and Moore has been making plenty of catches, but every single highlight catch you see, including this one, Hall is right there. So these guys are making each other better. Hall is providing really good coverage against a shifty guy, and then Moore's had to make some tough catches against Hall's coverage, a very long corner for him to be running these physical routes against. So that battle has been really fascinating, and the way these two guys have been competing this throughout the practices we've seen so far, it has me really optimistic about both of them.
There's a number of things that you kind of mentioned that I briefly want to touch on and maybe ask you a little bit about. First thing, I'm so excited to see the Mekhi Becton Carl Lawson matchup in pads this week and for the foreseeable future. And obviously when they get to play other guys, I think they're just both going to make each other better. It's such an interesting matchup because Becton's arguably the biggest guy in the entire NFL, and Carl Lawson's more of a compact speed and power rusher. He's a really nuanced pass rusher. And then he has a lot of leverage on Becton because he's so much lower than him. But he has the advantage right now because Becton doesn't have pads on. As an offensive lineman, you get a little bit of a benefit once you get the pads on. So excited to keep watching that matchup, and I think they're really going to benefit each other. That's something that nobody really ever talks about is the reps of in practice. That's what makes you better. I mean, this work right here is what's going to make Mekhi Becton, if he wants to be a Pro Bowler this year, Carl Lawson a Pro Bowl. It's not necessarily the reps of going up against Jerry Hughes or any other. That was the first pass rusher that came into mind, or Brian Burns if we're going to use week one. It's the reps that you get in August against your own teammates day in and day out. So I'm excited about that. The other thing to note, you talked about CJ Mosley sticking with, I think it was Chris Herndon on this play. Again, one play. What are your thoughts on CJ Mosley slimming down? He's playing at 231. This has been a bit of a storyline that's gone under the radar. The lightest he's weighed since high school. He I think in 2019 he weighed 250. Obviously, it's a different scheme. He's in a 4.3 from a 3.4. He played a 4.3 in college. And the thought process there is, okay, he's going to be lighter. He's going to be faster. It'll help out his coverage. You think he actually is a much better coverage linebacker than given credit for. How do you react to him slimming down? Is there any concerns you have there about him maybe slimming down too much? Because he does look very thin. But, how much do you think that will help him out in coverage? Because, as I said, you're a guy who actually firmly believes in his pass coverage strengths.
I like it. It's obviously a good fit for this scheme where, the linebackers are more responsible for covering ground and handling responsibilities and coverage. So it'll be useful for him. I think he's already really good in coverage just because of his instincts, knowing where to be and when to be there. He's already really good at that. But with some more speed, hopefully coming from him slimming down, he could become an even more dynamic player in coverage, just making more of those big plays and being more capable of handling man-to-man assignments and breaking into the flat. So he could make some more splashy plays now. It obviously is a little bit concerning in the run game. Will he maybe sacrifice a little bit in that phase because he's slimmed down to add speed and coverage? But even in the run game, his fundamentals are still really good. He knows how to read the play, fill his gap, be where he needs to be in that phase too. It's always been about the IQ and the fundamentals with him. It's never been about any particular physical ability. It's just about him being a great football player. So I feel good about him either way, but should definitely really raise the ceiling of what he can do in coverage, I think. But we'll see if it does affect him in the run game. And if it does, I think anytime you could make an equal trade-off between improving in the passing game for the run game, then you definitely take it, because I think it's a passing-centric league. Passing plays are more common than run plays. If you're going to be better in one phase than the other, then that is the one to do it in.
Yeah, I think maybe the only hesitation I have in a completely different situation, but the only other time, and I'm sure there's been other times. Well, let me start with the positive. The positive is that I think there was some concern about CJ Mosley's maybe desire to play football because he took, fair, unfair, because he took last year off. He got some negative press, I would say. And then there was, somebody took a photo of him in a bar, and it's, whatever. All of that bullshit aside, I think there was some sort of concern about his desire to play. And the fact that he dropped 20 pounds and he's the lightest he's been since high school, whether or not it translates to the field, definitely shows dedication. He seems revitalized. I mean, how could you not, going from Adam Gase to Robert Saleh, literally a linebackers coach who's one of the most fired up defensive-minded coaches in the league. I'm sure he feels re-energized. He feels healthier because his body is not, taken a beating for the last 2 years. So the positive is that, okay, it shows CJ Mosley's mindset is locked in. You don't lose 20 pounds, at 30 years old or 29 without being fully dedicated. The negative is kind of like what you were saying. The only experience that I can recall is in 2016 when Brandon Marshall dropped weight. And it's a different situation because I don't feel like Mosley's success was necessarily predicated on his size. But Marshall in 2015 was a receiver who used his strength, used his physicality, he bullied corners, and he had a monster year. And then 2016, they had the whole Todd Bowles diet or whatever it was, and he slimmed down because he's getting older. He wants to, be faster. And he wasn't the same player. He still had an okay season, but he just wasn't the same monster that we saw in 2015. Different situations, as I've said, but I think that's the only negative I have is just because he's lost weight, it doesn't always mean it's a good thing, but the mindset, and like you said, it's to fit the scheme. And I think it will ultimately make him a better coverage linebacker. I don't think I can draw any negative or positive conclusions from it yet. Let's go ahead and talk about, you posed a very interesting question. Oh, I had one more topic that I do actually want to bring up that you can get on that clip and other clips that have been released, and just kind of the early reports from training camp is Elijah Moore's usage. A lot of X, I think when he was first drafted, we thought, okay, he's going to be the slot guy. And Crowder's probably going to start. Elijah Moore maybe will return punts, use him as the gadget guy. He can be Crowder's backup. Then Crowder's out on minicamp, and Moore has a monster minicamp and OTAs. And the hype starts to build. I mean, Elijah Moore, the best player at Jets minicamp and OTAs, that, spreads like wildfire. The hype has certainly been there for Elijah Moore, and it's translated to training camp. But the thing that's great to see is that he's not just a slot option, which I think the hope was that he would develop like a Tyreek Hill, like an Antonio Brown, like a Tyler Lockett, those smaller guys who can play outside, that he would develop into that. But it seems like the Jets from the get-go are going to be using him outside. I thought maybe they would use him more in that Z role. But it seems like the Jets are really making him a vocal point of this offense, which credit to the rookie, because I don't know if that was the plan when they first drafted him. I think they maybe saw a smaller role like a Brandon Ayuk or a Deebo Samuel, how they were used in their rookie seasons. Obviously, involved plenty, but not necessarily the main focal point, that X receiver of the offense from the get-go, from week one. And it seems like that might be the case with Moore. Michael, what are your thoughts on Elijah Moore's reported usage?
Yeah, and even just from the clips we were watching, it definitely seems like, he's not here just to be a gadget guy, a motion threat, and he's going to do those things. We've seen plenty of him in motion from these few plays that are out there. It's going to be a big part of opening up the run game. You assume that they'll feature him in the screen game, but it's not like he's just going to do that. It's not like he's going to be Debo Samuel. And Samuel is a great player for the Niners, but that's all he does. He doesn't do a ton of downfield work, it's just screen, 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 and all that underneath stuff. But it doesn't seem like Elijah Moore is only going to be doing that. It seemed like from what we've seen him at X, we've seen him at Z, lining up on the outside and just doing outside wide receiver type of stuff, out routes. We saw the big post route from him on that touchdown. So it really seems like he's going to be a complete weapon, which isn't a stretch at all. That's what he was in college. He wasn't just a gadget guy with Ole Miss. He was second in the nation in deep receiving yards per game, and he was second in intermediate receiving yards per game last year. So he has shown already that he's capable of being an all-around receiver. Just because he's a smaller guy, it doesn't mean that he has to be pigeonholed to just playing these underneath roles. He can do those things and he can do them well, but he can also do everything else really well too, or at least he did in college. We'll see if it projects to the league with his size, but it should based on how he played in the SEC. His size didn't hinder him in contested catch situations. He had a very good contested catch rate, and we're already seeing that as he goes up against Bryce Hall, a much bigger guy. So it definitely seems like that he's going to be featured very heavily early on, and not just it just doesn't seem like there's going to be this transition, this easing in where, they'll start out with just throwing him screens, end arounds, things like that. It seems like he's going to be playing the most snaps, or right next to Corey Davis for the most snaps at the position, taking the field on the majority of the plays and getting a lot of targets in all sorts of roles, not just the manufactured ones, but also running a fairly complete route tree on the outside. So it's really exciting to see how quickly he has gained their trust to be able to do these things.
The thing that's going to be so fun and maybe, bad about this, well, it'll be fun because I think the expectations for this season aren't that the Jets are going to make the playoffs. I think that might be the hope, but that's not the expectation. The Jets fans just want a fun season where hopefully the Jets can hover around 500, be alive in December, give us some fun games towards the end of the season. That's all we kind of want, where the young guys play well, give us some momentum heading into the offseason, because the Jets have even more capital next season, when the fact that they have 2 firsts and 2 seconds and a bunch of cap space. I mean, they can really keep boosting up this roster. So just give us some hope. Don't give us another 1-7 start or an 0-13 start or anything like that. We just want to see some competitiveness. And the thing with Elijah Moore, and it's the case with a lot of rookies, is the Jets are probably going to end up starting 7 rookies. I mean, Zach Wilson's a definite. Elijah Vera Tucker's a definite. Sounds like Elijah Moore is probably a definite. Michael Carter seems to be the option 1A at running back. It seems like Hamza, and by the way, it is Hamza, not Hamza. Nasruddin is the leader right now to start at weak linebacker. It seems like Michael Carter II as the leader to start at nickel. And right now, the only 2 kickers in camp are 2 rookies. And even if they cut them, you've mentioned Jose Borregales. You could get cut. The Jets have the second place in the waiver claim, so he's a kind of highly sought after rookie kicker. Maybe he's the Jets kicker, but he's still a rookie. So 6 to 7 rookies starting and at the very least playing prominent roles for this team. It's going to be so fun to watch them develop. It might be produce some hair pulling moments. It might be frustrating, but at the end of the day, this is such a fun roster just because of that from a developmental standpoint. And it's exciting to see that these young guys like Michael Carter and Elijah Moore are making an impression on this team. I think they're all going to struggle at times differently. I think the defensive rookies, especially, I think you're going to see Michael Carter II and Hamza blow some coverages and allow some touchdowns. But it'll all be worth it in the end if they can keep developing. And as we go into next season, which seems like the season where you really want the Jets to take a huge leap, they're all going to have a bunch of reps under their belt. So exciting so far. First few days of training camp, obviously a bunch more. The pads are officially on. We're going to learn a lot more about this team. Let's just hope everybody stays healthy, knock on wood. And then we get into some preseason games the week after that. So it's awesome time to, like you said, to be a fan. These summers where you're reading the daily beat reporter training camp stats. It's an awesome time to be a fan. Let's hop into mailbag. And I mean, this mailbag has to be sponsored by @sports_fiend. And by the way, the 3 in fiend is with, or the E in fiend is with the 3. He sent us this awesome tweet based off a quote that I called him the GOAT, which he is, because he always submits questions to our mailbag. So shout out to him. I think all future mailbags have to be sponsored by @sports_fiend. But he sent us 3 questions. So we're going to go ahead and go through them. And then we have 6 other ones after that. Michael, the first one from @sports_fiend is about Marcus Maye. Because he's been dissatisfied with the long-term deal, how likely does he get traded by the deadline if he continues to play at a high level? And what would your best trade offer be if you were looking to acquire him? I should preface this with, look, Marcus Maye is in camp. He is a locker room leader. He's a likely captain. He, if you listen to his press conference this week, seemed pretty upset that the Jets didn't really value him. I think we've been over this, but I think it makes sense from the Jets perspective. Look, he's going to be 29. You can franchise tag him this year. You can franchise tag him next year. It's a new scheme. Why pay him elite top end money at a non-premium position? There's a lot of different things that go into it that the tag makes sense, but obviously he's frustrated. Michael, is there a scenario that you could see Marcus Maye getting traded in the middle of the season?
It definitely is something that could be on the table, but I just don't feel like it's likely because most NFL trade deadlines, I feel like there are a lot of rumors that go around and ultimately not much of anything happens. Especially with the Jets, there have been some candidates and possibilities over the past few years, and they haven't really pulled that trigger.
We traded Leonard Williams, and we had a bevy of moves last year. Joe Douglas has been kind of active at the trade deadline. What are you talking about? I mean, like, I know that what's his name? What's the guy that they just traded to the Niners? The backup defensive end that was I was surprised the
Jordan
Jets
Willis.
Yeah, like Jordan Willis got traded. So I think
I think high profile players. I know you mentioned Leonard Williams, but
Steve McClendon,
for the most part, I don't think he's at Maye's profile though.
Right, but he was a captain and a vocal leader.
Okay, well, you just completely squashed what I was saying. With facts, though, I honestly didn't register that as much. But I just still don't feel like it's something that I would bank on happening.
I'll extend you an olive branch because there is a difference. Because Maye is a lot younger, and the reason McClendon got traded, and he wouldn't have been traded if the Jets had any sort of positive momentum and were building something under Adam Gase and were hovering around 5. I don't think they would have traded Steve McClendon. They traded him because it was a sinking ship. So if the Jets are sitting at the trade deadline and they have 1 win or 2 wins, and it's very clear that this is it's a developmental season, but it's very clear that this is okay. This is going to be a little bit of a slower process for this team. And some team comes around with a third, I think you may do it, especially if the Jets could tag Marcus Maye again, but the question is, would he hold out or request a trade? If you listen to that press conference, it does not sound like he would plan to attack again. So it might be a little game of chicken, but I don't really see the Jets signing Maye long-term for the money that he wants, especially with another year. He's going to be a year older. So they can try to wait and tag him or sign him to a deal or a cheaper deal, or just give him the money he wants in hopes that he plays well into his 30s. But if somebody comes around with a third and the Jets are bad, I think I could see him doing it. A second would be ideal. But if the Jets are alive at all and Maye is having a great season, I don't think it happens. I would say the chances Maye gets traded, I would put it at less than 10%. I'd probably say like a 5% chance maybe that he gets traded at the deadline.
Yeah, I think you're right. If they're having a bad season, then I think the likelihood goes up. But if they're fairly competitive, I think they'll probably hold on to him.
All right, another one from @sports_fiend. What all-season stat line would Wilson need to become the first Jets NFL Offensive Rookie of the Year since the AFL-NFL merger?
Wow. Well, Justin Herbert was able to get it last year, barely edging out Justin Jefferson, but he had an amazing rookie season, one of the best ever for a rookie quarterback, really. So I feel like the bar is really high. There are going to be some tough competitors this year with Trevor Lawrence. There were a lot of really good receivers drafted in the first round. Some rookie running backs could get featured. So I feel like it's going to be a really crowded field this year. But for him to be the offensive rookie of the year, I think you have to be a top 10 to 15 kind of quarterback. But you do get quarterback bias, kind of like Herbert did, because Justin Jefferson, relative to receivers, was a lot better than Herbert was, but Herbert's a quarterback, so he kind of got that edge.
Right.
So you don't have to be like, because like this scenario, for example, Jefferson was probably a top maybe 5 receiver last year, and Herbert's probably the 12th best quarterback or so, somewhere around there. So you do sort of get that edge as a quarterback. So if Wilson can be like the kind of like Herbert was, 12th best quarterback in the league. Last year, Herbert put up 31 touchdowns, 10 picks, 4,300 yards, and 15 starts. So if Wilson could put up a stat line like that, which would be absolutely incredible, and there isn't that beats out the rest of the quarterbacks, and there isn't a skill position player who is as good as Jefferson was last year or better, then I think that would be the path. But it's a tough thing to do. The bar is really high.
I don't know. I kind of have I think it helps him that he's in the league's biggest market. I know that shouldn't really matter, but if Zach Wilson comes in here and the Jets are kind of competitive and he's balling out, I mean, I think he gets the award. It's tough because I think Trevor Lawrence has so much hype, and like you said, although it's become a quarterback award, Kyle Pitts, if he comes out and is just the player that everybody thinks he's going to be, I could definitely see him winning it. I would say the prediction that I made, I don't know if it was a week ago. I think it was on our Zach Wilson or a quarterback preview podcast. I said that I predicted that he would get over 30 total touchdowns. So that's rushing touchdowns, maybe a receiving touchdown. I didn't factor that in, but over 30 touchdowns. So that could be 26 passing touchdowns and 4 rushing touchdowns. I thought that would be a good, reasonable goal, a high-end high-end prediction for him, right? If he does that, I think he wins it. I think if he has any sort of success and the Jets are at least competent, win at least 7 games. Let's say the Jets win 7 or more games and Wilson throws or has rushing and passing over 30 touchdowns, I think he gets it. I mean, barring an amazing season from Kyle Pitts or an amazing season from Trevor Lawrence. But I think he's in a really good position here. I really do. I mean, I think the Jets have finally surrounded him. And I think this is actually a question later. So I won't go too into it, but I think the Jets have done a good job of really surrounding him with talent, coaching and personnel wise. I think he has a chance to definitely win this award. I'm not a betting man, but I would maybe throw some money on Zach Wilson. I mean, I feel like that's maybe bad juju and maybe some Jet bias, definitely some Jet bias, but I don't know. I could definitely see it. Whereas I didn't really see it happening with Darnold for whatever reason. At sports_fiend also asked his last question, which one of these groups, running back, tight end, or cornerback, do you see having the most growth from the beginning to the end of the season from an NFL ranking standpoint, and why?
I think this is a tough one. I'm leaning away from the tight end position. I don't know if I see a lot of growth happening there. There is potential with Herndon, but at this point, it's probably not the best bet. I think cornerback's probably the best odds out of this group because there's so much youth and so much potential for guys to for the Jets to try out a lot of different players until they find what works, because that's kind of what's happened the last couple of years, where they started out with a veteran, benched them, found a rookie who ended up playing well. Whether it was Austin 2019 and Hall last year. Guidry also got in there, played pretty well. Arthur Millette also played some decent football in 2019. So I think that's kind of what's going to happen with cornerback. I think we'll see them try a lot of different things, and they'll eventually kind of settle on the young players who are doing the best in this defense and have the most potential going forward. And then for Hall in particular, I just think he's going to have a good season. I'm really confident in his fit in this defense and what we saw from him last year and the early returns in training camp so far. So I'm going to go with cornerback.
I think cornerback's a safe bet because one, it's the question's about most growth. So they could go from 32nd to 24th, and that would be a considerable amount of growth. And I think you're right. Out of all these positions, they have the most youth playing. So I think that bodes well. I think they're going to get experience from Robert Saleh's system. And the expectation is that they're going to get better as the season goes on. And by the end, hopefully you have you're confident that Bryce Hall can be a long-term starting corner for you. And maybe that Michael Carter II has shown enough to be a starting nickel for you. And then we'll see about the other corner spot, but you're hoping one of those guys can do something. But Most likely, the Jets probably end up adding another corner, but that's a conversation for another day. I think corner is the safe pick here. And the other reason is, like you said, I don't think it's the tight end. Although it's a tight end friendly offense, I think you're going to see him have about the same production from beginning of the season to the end of the season, because there isn't really one of those young guys you're expecting to develop. I think Herndon either is going to show up from the beginning or he's not going to show it. Running back, I think that as Zach Wilson gets more comfortable, and you've seen this with rookie quarterbacks before, is that when they start out, that you run the football a lot and you try to get them, comfortable in an NFL offense. And as the season goes on, if he has more success, you kind of put more on his plate. You have him throw more, and you run the ball a little less. So that makes me think that there might not be as much growth. But to play devil's advocate here, I will say running back, just so I give something different. I think one, as the season goes on, it gets colder. You run the football a lot. I think this is going to be a really run-heavy attack. I think as the season goes on, the offensive line is really going to get in a groove together. They're going to establish that chemistry. And the Jets are going to be a run-heavy team. I think the only thing is the question's related about growth, and I think from the get-go, the Jets are actually going to be a pretty successful running team. I mean, it's been so long. Probably 2015 was the last year I felt like the Jets had a good running attack with Chris Ivory, where it's like, oh, 1st and 10, hand it off, you get a 12-yard gain. I mean, the Jets really have not had many seasons like that recently. And I think this is going to be the first one in a while where it's like the Jets' strength of their offense is going to be running the ball, then building some play action off of it. So I'll say running back, but probably cornerback. Great questions from Sport_Fiend. If you want to see what his wife made for him, you go to our Twitter, retweet it. It's probably one of the cooler things that's happened to this podcast. It's always, I know that people listen to it, but it's cool to see that, that people actually are hearing the words that we're saying.
Yeah.
Don't know why.
It's super awesome. It's a weird feeling. It's very cool though, and we obviously appreciate the Sports Fiend. He is the Q&A goat, and everyone else who asks questions as well. It's very cool to see. It makes it. Yeah. It's really one of the best parts.
Hey, he's the goat
about
he's
doing
the
podcast.
We're
not saying everyone else is the goat. Sorry, he's the goat, but we still appreciate it. You can make your claim to his throne. You can make your claim. No, he's going to be hard to beat.
Yeah. All mailbags are now brought to you by Sports_Fiend. If he submits questions, we'll put him at the top. So appreciate that. Humbling and very cool. This is another good question. So like you said, I mean, we appreciate everybody who sent questions in, but nobody's gonna top at Sports_Fiend. From at TMS. The other thing is that I like saying his name, and everybody else I can never pronounce that. I at TM Snowsill. There we go. I think his name is just Tristan Snow. Okay, so at TM Snowsill. There we go. I got it. It's because he capitalized the letter. Okay, whatever. Q for the pod. Which one of Darnold's best single season stats does Zach Wilson not beat in his rookie year? So for a refresher on Darnold's rookie season stats, he gives us passing yards.
This is career best stats.
Sorry.
All 3 of his years.
Sorry, my apologies. Thank you, Michael. That's why you're also the GOAT. This is the best single season stats for Darnold. So his passing yards, his highest was in 2019, which is 3,024 yards. His passing TDs also in 2019 with 19. Passing receptions, the lowest was this year with 11. Granted, he didn't play all the games this year, so it's kind of a little uneven, but completion percentage, 61.9%, 2019, rushing yards, 217, 2020, and then rushing TDs, which was 2, and he had 2 in 2019 and 2020. So which one of those, Michael, do you think that Zach Wilson does not surpass?
Well, first of all, it stands out here is that, and I was a huge Sam Darnold fan after
100 reasons to believe in Sam Darnold.
100 reasons after 2019, but these numbers are really bad. As career highs through 3 years, career highs through 3 seasons, these numbers are, and this would be a bottom 5 quarterback in the 2020 season. So the bar really isn't that high. I guess out of all these and the interceptions, I think Wilson will have more than 11. But the problem with this is that Darnold only played 12 games last year, or 11. He had 12 starts last year. So obviously he would have had a few more than that if he played the whole season, probably 14 or 15. So, and that's probably a little bit more than where I think Zach Wilson will go. I think I predicted 12 for him in my recent prediction.
Yeah.
So I do think he'll throw less interceptions than that, or fewer. More. But in terms of this, I guess the rushing yards is probably the one that he's most likely to fall under. I think he will make some good plays as a rusher. We talked about this on the Zach Wilson podcast, but out of all of these, I think that's the one he's most likely to fall under, because Darnold did have a randomly pretty good rushing season last year where he busted out a ton of great runs. He had more rushing yards last year, 217, than he did the first 2 years combined with 200. So that's a pretty good number for a quarterback. So I'm going to go with Wilson falling under that. But the rest of these, I think he can probably beat all of them. And he doesn't necessarily have to. If he has a tough rookie season, that's okay. We've seen plenty of rookies come back from that, whether it's Josh Allen, Carson Wentz didn't have great numbers as a rookie. Plenty of young quarterbacks have come back from that. So it's okay if he doesn't. But the bar that Darnold set is pretty low. I think he should beat out all of the passing numbers for Darnold's career high as a rookie, if not only because the supporting cast is a lot better for him to have the chance to do that.
It sounds a bit, it sounds like homerism to be like, oh, he's going to beat all Darnold's career highs as a rookie. But I agree with you. I think it's mostly coaching and personnel around. I mean, the thing with Darnold is that he's a guy who wasn't as experienced in the quarterback position. Let's be honest here. He was a linebacker for a majority in high school. He played a very simple offense at USC, a one-read RPO system for the most part. He gets the NFL. And yeah, I mean, as is the case for many rookies, but maybe Darnold more so in particular, he was a bit of a slow processor. And to help him with that, he had the worst teacher in the NFL teaching him an old and ineffective, out-of-date offense with nothing around him. So it was pretty obvious in retrospect that Darnold was never going to be good because he needed somebody who was really going to hold his hand and give him a simple offense and somebody to help him out. And that's fine. I mean, that's the case for most rookies. But if he walked into the situation that Zach Wilson's walking into, I think he would beat all these numbers easily. So that's kind of the basis for it. I think Zach Wilson, like you said, I think he'll beat all these numbers. I do think he'll throw more interceptions. I'll give him that. And I think, the rushing 217, is that kind of high for a quarterback, or is that just maybe
that is pretty high? I'm going to have to I'll check right now where that ranked last year. That is pretty high.
I don't really remember him running that much this year. And the fact that he only played.
Well, because he had a bunch of big runs. He had the one against the Broncos.
Oh, that's why. Yeah, I forgot. Yeah.
And he had a few other ones.
That's why. Yeah, I'll say he doesn't pass that. He certainly can. I think he's a better runner than Darnold, but I'll say that he doesn't pass rushing yards and he throws more interceptions, kind of like what you said. But it's like passing yards, I think he throws more than 3,000. I think
14th among quarterbacks.
Yeah, okay. So, I don't think Zach Wilson's that high. And like you said, those numbers got beefed up a little bit. But hey, look, Zach Wilson certainly has the athleticism to break one off. Like he certainly has the potential to get a big run that really boosts his rushing yards. The passing interceptions is the only one that I'm saying, okay, I think he's going to throw more than that.
Well, again, the thing is though, here 11, it was only
in 12 games, right? If you do interception,
14.
If you do interception
to 16 games,
if you do interception percentage, that's a different argument. But it's like, I think he throws about. I think he might be close to 4,000 passing yards, but because it's going to be run heavy offense, I'll say I think he has about 3,500 yards. Passing TDs, like we've said, I think he's going to throw over 25. Passing interceptions, I think he'll throw, like you said, maybe 12 or 13. I think, he's a rookie. He might force some things. Completion percentage is a very high completion percentage offense. So that's going to be padded a little bit. And then, I think he's going to get some rushing TDs on the goal line on the zone read plays. So that's a great question, Tristan. Really interesting one. But I think interceptions is the only one for sure. And then rushing yards probably as well. For Matt, Big Dogs 1318. Why does Joe Douglas value Alex Lewis so much? What does he really bring that's his starter in the NFL? And then additionally, do you think the Jets will carry a fullback this year, maybe picked off waivers? I don't think Joe Douglas, this is kind of the same question I have with him and Connor McDermott, because I've seen him say glowing things about Connor McDermott often. I think maybe he likes him as a person. He might be a good locker room guy. Alex Lewis, though, I don't think he sees him as a starter, as evident by he's not starting on this line. I think he sees him as a good backup. He comes from a good situation or a good organization in Baltimore. He's not great. He wasn't absolutely awful. I mean, he was pretty bad, I guess, last year. But I think as a depth option, he's not bad. I think you could do a lot worse than Alex Lewis as your backup guard. So I think that's why he probably values him, but I agree with you. I think he kind of overrates some of those guys, maybe as a former offensive lineman. I think he's done a good job of as evident by the Marcus Maye situation, separating business from your, heart, I guess, mind from heart. But I think Alex Lewis is solid depth. And then do you think the Jets carry a fullback? If Wesco gets hurt or if Wesco really isn't working out there and somebody cuts their fullback, maybe. But I don't think there's many teams right now that are rolling with 2 fullbacks. So maybe if somebody slips 3, I could see it. Michael, what about you for these 2 questions?
Yeah, in terms of Lewis, I guess for now he is just a good backup. I think you can do worse in terms of backup than him. Actually, I definitely think that because just compared to
We've
last year
seen it.
when Josh Andrews and Pat Elflein were your backups, those guys are much worse than Alex Lewis
Hey,
is.
Pat Elflein had 2 pancake blocks that went viral.
Yeah, he had 2 viral pancake blocks. Here's a $5 million deal. Go protect Sam Darnold's blind side.
Oh, I
Um,
forgot he's in Carolina.
yeah, and
Is he starting for them?
he's on the starting line, at least the
Oh,
most recent report I've seen.
Quentin Williams is going to have some fun week 1.
Yeah, he definitely is. But yeah, I think you just look at those 2 guys. That's an example of how bad a backup guard can be. Those 2 guys gave up so much pressure when they were playing. Alex Lewis is not a good starter. He is near the bottom in terms of starting players, but compared to those guys, he's definitely much more competent and serviceable than they are. I think he's in that sort of bottom of the barrel starter, but better than most backups sort of range, which is nice to have. So I think that's pretty much where they see him. I don't think he'll be in the mix to start, but as a backup, that's okay to have. And then in terms of fullback, I think I agree with you. If Wesco gets hurt, then I think they probably will pick one up to fill that role because I'm not sure. I guess Croft could play some fullback for you, although he hasn't done a ton of that in his career. He plays some H back, not really at fullback though, putting his hand in the dirt behind the quarterback. So they might pick one up if he gets hurt to replace him, but I'm not sure if they're going to add someone else. I feel like if it's something they really valued that much, they would have done something already, but they've
Well,
done
there wasn't how
literally
much.
nothing at fullback so far.
Well,
So
there was a report that they were interested in Ben Mason, and then how
right.
much there wasn't really much in the free agent market. And I think they maybe think Wesco can potentially fill that role. I don't think Wesco's the long term fullback,
I'm
honestly.
not saying they won't use it. I'm just saying in terms of
Right.
adding other people.
You
I
never you
think
never know
they're
though.
good with Wesco for now, but we'll
It,
see.
it's an interesting proposition. There might be somebody on a team somewhere that they like that fullback, and if he gets cut, I could see him making it. I don't think Wesco's the
Yeah,
long
for
term
sure.
fullback on this team. I mean, hey, well, maybe he has a great year, but somebody's not going to. So not everybody can have a great year. And I think what you're hoping to see is that he can establish himself as a good long-term blocking tight end. I just don't think he's a fullback, but we'll see. From at Pretty Flacco, is Keelan Cole a starter, and who will be our receiving leader this year? I think Keelan Cole. The thing that Cole brings that because I've been a big proponent of having Corey Davis and Elijah Moore and James Crowder on the field at the same time. The thing that Keelan Cole brings is he's a good blocker, and he is a good fit in the offense as well. So it's like if you're going to have Moore and Crowder out there, you probably aren't running the football. I mean, you're going to have to, so you don't get one dimensional. But if you have Cole out there, not only is he a good receiver with good hands and good route running, but you can run the football to his side and still be okay. So I do think that there's a chance that like if you're going to play the stupid game of who plays the first snap, if they're the starter, I think there's a chance Cole starts some games because it'll be 1st and 10 and they might want to run the football. But I think overall Moore plays more snaps. I think Moore and Davis play more snaps than him. I think he's probably him and Jamison Crowder probably play the same amount of. I'll say Crowder plays a little slightly more snaps. The guy that he's really kind of working against is Mims, who we're going to talk about next. But as far as Keelan Cole goes, no, I don't. Kind of, but I think that he's 4th on the depth chart right now. Who will be a receiving leader this year? I think it's Moore. I think Davis will be on the field every play, 1st and 2nd and 3rd down. I don't think he really gets taken off the field. I think that you saw in training camp a little bit that they put him in motion. They put him in the slot. They moved him around all over the place. So there's a chance, but I think that he is going to draw. Well, I'll go with Moore. I think Moore is going to get more manufactured touches. I think that they're going to find ways to get him involved on those jet sweeps that kind of count as passes because they're forward and bubble screens and just they're going to find ways to feed Elijah Moore the ball. And I think Corey Davis is going to be maybe lower volume, but still highly involved. Michael, what do you think?
Yeah, in terms of Keelan Cole starting, it's just so hard to project right now. I feel like the most certain things that Davis and Moore are going to be pretty much every down players. They do most wide receivers rest occasionally, but they'll play the majority of the snaps. So I feel like that is pretty much set in stone. But beyond that, I feel like there's still a lot of sorting out to be done. Do they go with your suggestion and have Jameson Crowder be that third guy, and that's your starting trio? Is it very rotation heavy and you alter it week to week, down to down, with four, maybe even five different guys playing fairly regularly? Or is Keelan Cole going to be that third guy, or is Denzel Mims going to be that third guy? I feel like there's still a lot of sorting out to be done. I can't really come up with a prediction that I feel good about in terms of how this wide receiver room is going to look beyond Moore and Davis just being the two top guns. That's what I feel the most confident about. I think that this is going to be their passing game.
Right.
Those two guys are going to be driving it, and beyond that, it's just going to be a dogfight for playing time over the next couple months and then throughout the season too. And obviously injuries are going to happen and people are going to play more than we expect them to. And players who we might feel good about might not even play that much. Injuries always happen and change everything. But I feel good that Moore and Davis are going to really drive this offense and lead this team in targets by a wide margin. And then the rest of it, we got to see what happens throughout training camp and the preseason. But in terms of receiving yards, I'm going to go with Elijah Moore. I think it will be tough between those two guys. I think Moore will get higher volume, but be less explosive in terms of yards because he'll have a lot more underneath stuff. Whereas I think Davis will be really efficient in terms of yards per reception, making a lot of big plays. But I think it'll be neck and neck between them. But I'm going to roll with Moore because of the volume.
Yeah, I think that's a very good analysis. The only thing that I think that may affect it is if Elijah Moore is the player that he's being hyped up to be. And look, he's going up against the Jets corner, so he's not going to be Tyreek Hill year one, but he probably is going to be, I don't want to say probably. I think he'll be pretty good year one. If he develops into that option 1A for the Jets and he's really getting involved, I could see defenses keying in on him more, and that might open up things more for Davis. But I agree. I think that your analysis that Davis is going to be a little bit more efficient in terms of yards per catch, because Moore is going to be doing a lot more of the underneath stuff. I think it's a good assessment, but I agree with you. I think it's more. From at the coffee shop pod, will Mims continue to play on the third team offense? No. I don't think he will. I think he's not going to be with the starters for a little bit, but like you said, injuries always happen. I think Denzel Mims is certainly going to play games this year. He's going to be in. And look, this is a guy who didn't get a full off season. I forget, he was injured all training camp. So he didn't get a training camp. He didn't get a mini camp and OTAs last year's rookie year. He missed the first 7 weeks. And then he was just kind of in this bad situation, and he still flashed. I mean, he still flashed that jump ball potential. And then he comes in, he's not necessarily the ideal scheme fit. We've heard that a million times. He was injured during mini camp. So he's behind. I mean, that's just the way it is. He's behind and he's raw. He's a second-year player. I mean, I think the thing is that there's so many young guys playing prominent roles in this team that now there's this expectation that every young guy has to be able to play immediately. But there are young guys that don't play that much until their third year. I mean, that happens. I don't think that's going to be the case with Mims because he's played a good amount of games his rookie year and he'll play games this year. But he's going to have to carve himself out a role in this offense. He's going to have to improve on his route running. He's going to have to show the coaching staff that he can be out there and thrive in the scheme, and then you can start to build some plays for his strengths. But his strengths are valuable. I mean, hey, if it's a 3rd and 15 and you want somebody on a comeback route, Denzel Mims is probably your guy. If you're in the red zone and you got to throw a jump ball to somebody, I think Denzel Mims is your guy. So he's going to have a role in this team. I think he's behind. I think he will work his way to the second team offense by the end of training camp. I think there's going to be times where he's starting. He's a good run blocker. That certainly helps him out. When injuries hit, he's going to have a role in this team. There's no doubt about it in my mind. As we said, I don't know if he's ever going to be receiver one. He might. I don't know. That's just the truth of the matter. But the thing is that he's not a bum. We know that. We know he's not a bum. As evident from last year in the situation that he played in. I mean, look, anything can happen, but I'm pretty confident he's not a bum. It's just, is he a starting receiver in this league, or is he more a guy you want as your 4th receiver that he comes in for situational jump balls and contested catches? But he's a guy that fits Zach Wilson's strengths. He's a guy that is very similar to Dax Milne, who is Wilson's favorite target at BYU. I think, and you've pointed out, Michael, that he's a better fit in this offense than people are giving him credit for. So he's working through some stuff. You know, not everybody's going to be able to to have a great year in this offense just because it's going to be run heavy and there's so much receiver depth in this room. But I think he has a role in this team, and he's not a cut candidate or going to be regulated to third team offense the entire training camp. I'm still in on Denzel Mims. What about you, Michael?
Yeah, I agree. There's still a lot of time for this to play out. Preseason will be a big opportunity for him to make some big plays and kind of make his case to elevate up the depth chart a little bit. For now, it does look like he is pretty firmly on that third team. I know we kind of brushed it under the rug in OTAs and training camp, but here he is, and he's still on the third team. So I think for now, yeah, he is legitimately on the
But
third team.
who's playing over him?
Well, Cole, Crowder.
Okay. So your starting lineup right now, it seems to be Davis, Cole, and Crowder. Your second team, I mean, I know Moore is playing with the ones, but we're just, for all intents and purposes, let's just go through this. Your second team, you have Moore, Barrios. So who's playing in front of? That's what I'm like. He's at worst, he's on the second team. Like Manasai Bailey or Josh Malone, like Lawrence Cager. Like those guys are maybe getting reps ahead of him right now, but they also had a mini camp in OTAs, and it's not going to stay that way. Denzel Mims was a second round pick, and he's from this general manager. So he's on the second team offense.
Yeah, and so there's a lot of time for it to sort out. I just put together some predictions recently for the receiving production, which I put up at Jets X Factor, and I have Mims coming in as that third guy. I think by a wide margin behind the Davis and Moore, but I think eventually Mims is going to settle in and be the third, essentially the third starter next to Moore and Davis. I think he is a good enough fit in the offense to do that, thanks to what he can do over the middle on crossing routes, slants, making plays after the catch, especially off of play action. You find a way to get Mims the ball when, you roll out Zach Wilson, you get Mims coming across the field. That he's the type of guy you want to get the ball in those situations. So I think he is going to eventually work his way up and be a starter. That's my prediction, but it can go a variety of different ways. So there's so much to sort out in this wide receiver room.
I won't say starter, but I do think he has a role on this team. I think like you said, he has a valuable skill set, and he brings something that other guys on this team don't. For Matt Pizzoia, Pzoia, are they doing enough to surround Zach Wilson with what he needs? Not supporting players, coaches in the QB room. No. In my opinion, maybe it might end up working out, but I think, with obviously the tragedy that happened with Greg Knapp, he was the veteran voice in that room. He was the experienced guy. Michael and I talked about this last week, where it's like Rob Calabrese, first year quarterback coach, Mike LaFleur, first year offensive coordinator, and nobody else in the depth chart has taken an NFL regular season snap. I think LaFleur, I think if they don't do anything, they'll be fine. But I think that he might miss something. I think that Josh McCown was so valuable to Sam Darnold his rookie year, because it's not even all the on-field stuff. It's just you want a guy who's been an NFL starting quarterback, who's faced some scrutiny, who's had some bad games, who they can just show you the ropes a little bit. There's some things that only an NFL veteran quarterback can teach you, and that a coach can't teach you, and that a young, James Morgan and Mike White can't teach you. I think if they don't do it, I don't think it's the end of the world. Out of the whole pie chart of what's going to determine Zach Wilson's success, maybe this accounts for less than 5% of it, but I think that they should bring in a veteran quarterback. And I do think they will. I think whether it's now or after the training camp cuts, after some veterans get released, somebody else is going to be in this room in addition to Zach Wilson and James Morgan.
Yeah, I think there's definitely a case to be made that the lack of a veteran quarterback will be hurtful for him. I do kind of have a counterpoint, though, and it's the quote that Robert Saleh brought up, I believe, a couple months ago when he was asked about this. And essentially what he said was that he doesn't see too much value in having a veteran quarterback from that perspective, because he thinks unless that guy has experience in the offense that they're running, then he's just on the same page, and that they feel like that he essentially just dumped on the idea of a veteran backup, and the value they could have for a young quarterback. So I'm not sure. It can go either way. There are reasons to think that it can be productive. There are reasons to think it might not matter at all.
Well, but that doesn't. Sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, but like Blake Bortles is available, and this offense, although it's not the exact same, is run by a good amount of teams in the NFL. There's a variation of this offense, and like Blake Bortles is a guy that he played in LA with the Rams, so he learned McVay's version of the offense, which I actually think will be kind of similar to what the Jets are going to do. That's a guy who was a top, wasn't he a third overall pick in the draft? I mean, was a top pick, took a team to an AFC championship in the way that Mark Sanchez took a team to the AFC championship, and has stuff to teach Zach Wilson. I know what you mean, that, if they sign somebody, let's say they sign Nick Foles at the end of training camp, it's like, well, Zach Wilson's going to know the playbook better than Nick Foles. But Foles will still have other invaluable pieces of advice. And it's like, there are guys who are going to be available that have played in this offense or played in this type of offense. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, but so those are fair points. I mean, there are just two different ways to look at it in terms of the value. It seems like the Jets aren't too keen on it. The possibility is definitely there that they could add one. I would absolutely keep it on the table, if not only because of the on-field value, depending on how Mike White and James Morgan play. And speaking of Morgan, seems like he's starting to trend up a little bit. But so they could add one for the on-field value. I think that's important and a big question mark. But in terms of the leadership and how it affects Wilson, I'm kind of on the side of the spectrum that doesn't think it's extremely important. But I think there definitely is something to be said for it. So it will be interesting to see how it plays out. And then also in terms of the coaching staff, obviously Rob Calabrese is going to have a pretty big amount of pressure on him now. I don't know if the Jets planned for him. Obviously, they didn't plan for him to be this prominent of a role early on. Even as the quarterbacks coach, I don't think he was supposed to be the number one guy next to Wilson. Although Michael LaFleur is probably essentially that number one guy. But Calabrese obviously gets thrust into the spotlight now, and he is younger than a lot of starting quarterbacks in this league, and he's only been in the NFL for 2 years as an offensive quality control coach. So he's learning that position on the fly, just like Zach Wilson is learning his position on the fly. So that is a little bit of a concern, but it'll be interesting to see how this aspect of Wilson's development plays out.
From @the_fake Matt Gold, two more here. Value the following expiring players in a deadline deal: Jameson Crowder, Morgan Moses, Foley Fatukasi, and Marcus Maye.
I guess for Marcus Maye, I think a second rounder would be I would hope to get for him if we're going to trade him at the deadline, at least. I think a third rounder, I'd probably, depending on where they are, like we said before, if they have one win at the trade deadline, then, take what you can get and just try to keep rebuilding. If you don't think you're going to be bring him back next season, and obviously how he's performing depends on it, is a factor in this too. Like Leonard Williams, for example, if the Jets had traded him earlier in his career, I think they would have gotten a lot more than they did, because the first half of 2019 was the worst stretch of Leonard Williams' career by far. He was doing nothing. So they kind of sold him at a low point, and that's why they only got a third and a fifth, and now he's one of the best.
Which at the time we thought was a great deal.
Yeah, but because he was doing absolutely nothing that season. So that is part of it too. How's Marcus Maye going to be playing this season? But I would probably say a second rounder right now. Moses, as an expiring contract, who if they're trading in the middle of the season, probably as a quarterback supporting piece, probably wouldn't be playing well anyway. He's probably a day 3 pick kind of guy. Same thing for Crowder. Foley maybe a little bit higher. Maybe he could get a third or a fourth.
No, he's a defensive tackle. I mean,
there have been some trades. I've seen some tackles get that.
The only reason,
a little bit high, honestly. I think fourth. I probably was pushing it with a third round pick.
The only way they trade Foley is if he's not necessarily fitting in the scheme, which, we've talked about how this defensive line's weakness may be run defense. So I actually think Foley will kind of carve out his own role. So the only way that he gets traded is if he's not playing that well, in my eyes. I would say a fifth. I would say a fifth for Foley. I think you kind of got on the other ones. I think Crowder probably around the same, conditional fifth or something like that. I mean, you can't, if they're getting traded, they're probably on a discount. Moses, 6 or something like that. And then May. I think May you could probably get a day 2 pick for. I think May you could probably get a third for. But maybe a second, but probably a third. All right, last question from @baby_Jesus14. Can Elijah Moore have a Brandon Cooks-like rookie season? I've seen Elijah Moore compared to Brandon Cooks a few times. There's obviously a lot of players Elijah Moore's been compared to. We won't really have a better sense till we get to see him in this offense without, not just 2 training camp clips taken secretly by fans in the bleachers. But statistically, Michael, do you think that type of season is a good jumping off point or a good comparison for Elijah Moore's rookie year?
Yeah, I think that's a pretty solid goal for him. So Cook's in his rookie year, he missed 6 games, so he only had 550 yards, but 55 yards a game in 10 games is a pretty good mark. If you maintain that over 17 games, you'd have 935 yards. Cooks also had 3 touchdowns. He averaged 10 point. He kind of put up the efficiency numbers I could see Moore putting up. So Cooks as a rookie, which is a lot different than the rest of his career. But Cooks as a rookie, 10.4 yards per reception. That's pretty low, but 77% catch rate. That's really high. So that kind of could be what Moore does: high catch rate, lower yards per reception. But I mean, I could also see Moore not doing that and putting up high numbers in both categories because he's making plays both down the field and short. But in terms of Cooks' rookie season, that is a solid floor, 55 yards a game. If Moore can do that, you got to be really happy with it as a rookie, especially because you look at using Brandon Cooks as a comparison, what he was able to build off of that. Cooks went up to 71 yards a game in his second season, and overall in his career. Since then, he's averaged 68 yards a game, which is over 1,000 yards per season. So 55 yards per game for Moore would be a really nice floor. I do feel optimistic he can do better than that, though, even as a rookie. It's a very optimistic prediction because most second round receivers don't come close to that, obviously. Even first round receivers, that's expecting a lot. It does seem like he has a chance to, but if we're being realistic, 55 yards a game for him this year on 8 yards target, which is a nice solid mark, especially the catch rate that Cooks had was nice. That would be a good jumping off point for him.
Yeah, I've looked at Deebo Samuel's rookie season. That 2019 season is kind of a good, I mean, look, it's the same offense, similar role, where he had 57 catches, 802 yards, average 14 yards a catch, had 3 touchdowns. I think that is a pretty, I kind of think Moore will have more touchdowns. I kind of have more, maybe 5 touchdowns, 6 touchdowns, something like that. And some rushing touchdowns in there as well. I mean, look, I think the expectations for Moore have been astronomical. I mean, the rise for his expectation since the draft has been crazy. I mean, Michael, not to throw you under the bus here, but when he got drafted, your first reaction wasn't necessarily a positive one. Would you like to read?
It definitely wasn't. No, I'm willing to admit that. And I think that's just because I wasn't prepared for him to be on the table. So it was just kind of surprising. I never really thought wide receiver was an option for them this high. So I didn't research him as intensely as I researched the offensive linemen, the edge rushers, linebackers, almost every other position. So I just was surprised and taken aback and not really prepared to embrace that. So that was really the basis of my reaction. But, once I got to get into him a little bit more, I definitely quickly became excited, and in a legitimate way, not just with the fan rationalizing with every single player. Like, there are real reasons that he's actually very exciting, has a lot of upside. So I am willing to admit,
I'm just never gonna let it go. I'm gonna screenshot the text messages.
You should hear my reaction to it. I recorded it. It's very indifferent. So I'm gonna play that for myself every time he scores a touchdown. I forget what I was like. I don't know. It was really.
We're kind of the opposites in the sense. Well, I mean, we're both fairly measured, but like I always try to find the positives, but probably too positive. I mean, especially you look at the last few seasons of this team, and then we're both pretty measured. But then you like after week 1 against Buffalo, you were pretty much like the season's over and Darnold sucks. He's never going to be good, which ended up being right. But at the time, I was like, all right, relax. But so I mean, it's a good balance. We all have. I mean, look, he hasn't hit the field yet, so we'll see. But I agree with you. Sometimes in the draft, you get too caught up on filling needs and not just finding the best players. But we have a whole nother one in a few more months. I mean, we have to get through the season first. But we got 8 months, and then we got another one, so we can try to be better about that time or next time. I think we'll wrap it up there, Michael. I guess last question for you, not in the mailbag. What are you most excited about this week? Pats come on. You're going to practice. We're recording this Sunday, but you're going to practice tomorrow. By the time people are listening to this, practice have probably already happened. But this week in general, what are you looking to see?
Yeah, I'm really excited to go to practice in person. I haven't been to the facility before, so excited take a look at it, and just to see the pads on, it's going to be
And
really
to see the giant Jets logo plastered
the
across
giant updated oval on the side of the building. If you thought that was going somewhere, it's not going anywhere anytime soon. There's a big reminder for it. It's just funny to think about, like, because obviously that's a regime-based thing. Like, new coaching staff comes in, you get the AGNB stickers everywhere, the all gas, no brakes.
Well, he apparently made
And
changes to
get this.
MetLife too.
So it's like, I'm just trying to think of Robert Saleh coming in and looking at that and being like, you know what? We need a giant logo up there. Order me a 100-foot jet sticker and just stick it right up there.
I'll sign the contract if you plaster that giant updated oval across the facility. Yeah, that was probably more of an own. That has to be more of an own. Well, maybe not. I don't know. Every coach has their own. Like, remember Gase had like the giant video boards at practice. Yeah. Like, every coach kind of has their own thing, and like the uniform combos change too. So that if I was at a Robert Saleh press conference, I think I would ask him what were the changes that he's requested between the facility and MetLife, because he's acknowledged that he has. Because when he did that like tour of MetLife. The next day they asked him about it. And he was like, oh yeah, we had some things I wanted to add or whatever. I'm just curious, like from a coach's perspective, what are some of the things that you want to add to the locker room or whatever? But yeah,
I wonder what Christopher Johnson's was when he said that. Like, just give me that giant Jets. I just love that logo. That oval is so football shaped.
This facility this facility could use a bigger oval. That's what I think. That was my Christopher Johnson impression. What did you think?
It's so good. He's done this impression before. I knew it was great, so I teed it up. I had to give him an opportunity to do it.
Thank you. That wasn't planned, but not as planned as our Mekhi Becton ad read a few weeks ago. You can follow us at CYJ Pod on Twitter. You can follow Michael at Michael_Nania, myself at Ben W. Blessington. Go to jetsxfactor.com for the best place to go for Jets content. Rate, review, subscribe on iTunes. We appreciate everybody who submitted mailbag questions. Sports_fiends still the GOAT though. Anything else, Michael? I think that's probably it, right? We're probably good.
I think so.
All right.
Also one more thing. Robert Saleh stole my chant that I came up with.
I thank you. Fine. Yeah, I'm glad, because Michael was trying to end episodes with me saying all gas and him saying no break. And I was like, Michael, could you be any lamer? That's so lame. But then he was like, I think it'd be like Robert Saleh should have like a chant in the locker room with the players where he goes all gas and they go no break. And I was like, better than us doing it, but still kind of lame. And then of course, Robert Saleh does that with the fans. So he probably will. I mean, like Rex had the whole in the home of the Jets, which is, was cool, but in retrospect,
which carried over to Todd Bowles a little bit.
It did. There was a few players left over, but now they're all gone. So maybe the all gas, no break thing will be our thing.
It's going to catch on.
All right. Well, I'll give you credit on that one. All right, everybody.
Thank you for listening. Are we going to do it?
No, we're not. It's still lame if we do it. If these two people can't do it. All right. And I don't have the same charisma as Robert Saleh. So anyways, thank you for listening. Go Jets. Everybody have a great week. No injuries this week at practice. Everybody knock on wood simultaneously.
I have to say, though, the way he was saying it is very like kind of gym class, elementary school
PE teacher,
basketball league kind of vibe to it. He's like, I'm going to say all gas. You guys got to give me a no break.
I'm surprised
it's a little cheesy.
I'm surprised he didn't go like, I can't hear you. And then he was like a louder one. All right. Thanks for listening, everybody.